Hello again. This deranged-looking man is called Forkwad. He's lonely and he's poor, but he's got a mission. That mission is to amass a mighty retinue of cataphracts and use them to build an empire the likes of which, well, have been seen before. There's quite a few mighty empires out there, but, you know, Forkwad wants one too. Our quest begins in the Empire, where we'll hire only the finest of recruits. You know, Vigla boys, the ones that become cataphracts eventually. However, perhaps more important initially than hiring a load of men with spears is filling Forkwad's pockets with dinars and adorning his thin, fragile frame with armor. So he'll enter himself into a great many tournaments, since even with minimal character skills, with a little player skill, you can win the majority of these. Yes, this is what player skill looks like. Get over it. Forkwad swings, stabs and shoots with whatever weapon is handed to him in arenas all across Calradia, until he's finally got enough renown and sold enough valuable tournament rewards to support a growing force of Imperial Vigla recruits, which after a little training on looters require horses to be promoted to the cavalry ranks. Forkwad also quests, because leveling charm a little bit early on can go a very long way in Bannerlord, and also because the majority of these quests involve murdering people, which continues to train his ever-swelling cavalry force. Before too long, he's got a force of about 20 cataphracts, some of which are elites now, which means we get to watch them absolutely annihilate small gangs of looters like this. Extremely satisfying. But this can go much further. With level 25 charm, we can unlock the skill that grants extra renown from winning tournaments. Renown being the stuff that you need to level up your clan, by the way, increasing your maximum party size as well as your follower count. And speaking of followers, it's probably time we got some of those to run caravans for us. So first I find Edwayne Fairhair, who is completely useless at trading, so he'll basically just end up being another soldier in the ranks for now. And then a little later we get Eric Blacktooth, who does have some trade skill, so he can run a caravan for us in the imperial city of Rote. This won't exactly make us ultra rich, but it'll help at least counter the outrageously high wages of these elite cataphracts. And having remembered that followers and the clan system are a thing, it's probably also time that Forkwad does the campaign thing and rescues his family, since family members are essentially just free workers. So with the help of a dodgy slaver with a deeply untrustworthy accent, we'll rescue our brother and two younger family members. The brother, Najun, has a half-decent trade skill, so he's immediately given a caravan to manage, whilst the two young children are being sculpted into dangerous horse-riding killers from an early age. After running around for a little longer, hunting down bandits, winning tournaments, and continuing to swell his small force of cataphracts up to 50, Forkwad decides that it would probably be wise to spend some time in service to the Empire. He wants his own kingdom, but for now, to build up renown and fill the treasury, perhaps serving under Garios of the Western Empire isn't such a bad idea. So he finds Garios, bends the knee, and is given the rank of senator. Which seems a bit quick, but alright, fine. It even came with some more cataphracts and a cool two-handed sword that Forkwad definitely won't sell in the nearest town for a quick buck. The Western Empire is currently in a war with the Vlandians, so there's fighting to be done. Very glorious fighting with a great many horses and camels. Anyway, Forkwad follows Garios around for some time, joining in on these large pitched battles, looting what he can and continuing to train his cavalry. Until we arrive at Thraktaray Castle and lay siege. Forkwad valiantly rides to the walls, puts up a siege ladder and then waits for Vipon, another lord, to climb it first. As you might expect, Forkwad gets what he deserves and is bonked from the walls near immediately. But the garrison here is small and is quickly overrun nonetheless. Garios and the others were clearly watching his heroics in the siege because they vote to grant lordship of the fief to Clan Maximum, which is Forkwad's family name, by the way. Forkwad Maximum. Anyway, moving on from his incredibly dumb name, we've got a castle now and its accompanying villages. It's not exactly going to pay out massive amounts of cash, but just like the caravans, it'll help. And then immediately it was voted to make peace with the Vlandians, meaning I can relatively safely dump the castle's entire garrison to save on wages. The following weeks are occupied by a short war with the Aserai, that so far as I can tell resulted in nothing meaningful at all happening before a war is declared then on the Battanians now. Annoyingly, another faction that borders my little undefended castle. But never mind, this is more of an offensive war anyway. We're immediately off to siege Various Castle in a big doom stack. As you can see, Forkwad was very helpful indeed during this siege, helping to smash the gates down with his little knife before having a large rock dropped on his head in the entrance. Nonetheless, the castle was taken and not given to Forkwad. But anyway, this short Battanian war really isn't all that interesting. Aside from the fact that I realised I had a load of them in the dungeons here in the castle, which if Forkwad were to ransom, would be worth about 16,000 dinars. That's tempting, but executions are quite fun, so let's split it down the middle. Ransom a few to fill the coffers, and execute the rest because it's funny to watch little Forkwad behead these massive forest people. Something I'm doing at this point to train the troops is having them clear hideouts, since I can just send them off to do their thing whilst Forkwad stays put and waits. It's a decent way to gain relations with nearby villages, which opens up more recruitment capacity. That's very good. In a rather insulting display to Forkwad, a messenger arrived from some other imperial clan with a marriage proposal for Najun, Forkwad's brother. Again, that's a little insulting to just bypass the real chat of the family, but alright, fine, whatever. Like I said earlier, family members are just unpaid employees that sometimes have children. The Battanians did eventually decide to besiege my precious castle, so I suggested to the Western Empire that we make peace just to get them to leave. Now then, we're at war with the Eastern Empire instead, and it's at this point that my original idea here starts to fall apart a little. I wanted to have a gigantic and glorious army of knights that just obliterate everything in their path. But in reality, they're not working as well as I'd hoped they would. In large battles, far more of the elite cataphracts than I would like get killed, which is, in hindsight, a rather obvious outcome of repeatedly charging into walls of infantry with spears. So anyway, perhaps it's time for a change. Not to a balanced composition of infantry, archers and cavalry or anything like that, mind you. Forkwad is just going to choose something else to go all in on. Imperial Palatine Guards seem pretty good. Let's try and get a few hundred of them. That will surely help, right? At the very least, it's considerably easier to recruit and train these guys, since they're not upgraded from the fancy elite recruits, nor do they need horses. So as Forkwad goes around Calradia filling up his party, we occasionally pop into the castle and leave a load there as a garrison. For one, this means they'll slowly be trained and upgraded thanks to the training ground there, but it also increases the security of the fief, which is good, I guess. I don't know, by this point all of you Bannerlord nerds probably have a million different things to yell at me for in the comments. If not, then perhaps you should just leave a comment about what a beautiful man Forkwad is. Whilst we're out campaigning with the Chad Emperor of Mankind, Garios, tragedy strikes. The damn tree huggers are besieging our castle again, and I'm neither close enough nor wielding a force large enough to do anything about it. So we find ourselves once more fiefless. Fiefless and maidenless. Eventually, Forkwad will have to leave his service to Garios, but it'd be smart to get Clan Maximum up to at least tier 4 first to increase how many of all the useful things we can have. Companions, workshops, party size. Everything you realistically need to start claiming a large portion of the map is dictated by your clan tier. To get there, well, basically it's just more of the same. A healthy combination of tournamenting and roaming around the map, just generally getting involved. So whilst Forkwad might be sad about losing Thraktere Castle, at this point with 5 companions all running caravans, owning a couple of workshops in various imperial towns and no longer having to pay the wages of a gang of elite cataphracts, he's making bank. By this point we're getting pretty well renowned. Clan Maximum is into tier 3, allowing for around 150 troops in his party, and a few more companions too. We've also been given a new castle to play with, Gauss. It probably won't last all that long being on the front line of a war, but Forkwad's going to milk it while it's his, earning up to 2,000 dinars a day at times here. When the caravans are doing well anyway, which is far from all the time. Anyway, we've got more renown to earn. So I decided since Forkwad was running around the continent anyway, I might as well do the Neretzi's Folly quest. We're going to be creating a kingdom eventually, we might as well be ready for when the time comes. First though, more renown. Forkwad is sporting a sizable force of archers by now, most of which are in the upper levels of archering. Look at them go. Look how they arch. But the shine though, as it often does, soon wears off. After a series of wars alongside Garrios and the rest of the Western Empire with his force of archers, just like the cataphracts before them, they aren't really performing. If only there was some way he could harness the power of the horse, whilst keeping the relative safety of an archer. To the steppe. We need Kuzites. With his rather high stewardship skill, or was it leadership? Well, whichever, they're both quite high, and thanks to that, when he recruits a load of folks, a good portion of them are immediately ready to jump to Tier 2. Which in the case of the Kuzite nomads means they jump on a horse and ready their bow. Oh yes, this is far more like it. They move fast, circling the foe, sticking them from all sides with 100 arrows. Yeah, I can work with this. Forkwad is the kind of commander to lead by example, so he's been practicing his horse archery for a little while now. Ever since he started amassing a force of archers, actually. Perhaps then he should have realized sooner that what his troops were lacking was the spine of a horse, repeatedly thudding into their taints during combat. That blunt trauma is what lets a simple lowly archer transcend to reach their true potential. And so begins a long period of riding around looking for as much trouble as possible with as large a gang of riders as Forkwad can muster. He's only really interested in renown, but if Garrios wants to bestow him some fiefs, then that'll do nicely too. Very nicely indeed, as it turns out. He's been given possession of the rather large and central, and rather well-built, Sanapea. That should be a pretty hard fief to lose with its high walls and large garrison. But Clan Maximum is still only a middling Tier 3. So whilst scratching around for more renown, Forkwad has stumbled into a bandit hideout, and after letting his Khan's Guard do all of the hard work, he finds that it's the one containing the final piece of the legendary dragon banner. Putting the 3 pieces together allows him to either aid an existing kingdom or create his own, should he please. And oh, he most certainly pleases. But not just yet. Forkwad and his filthy horde of unwashed Kuzites continue to slaughter under the banner of the Western Empire, farming renown and filling their coin purses by selling the loot and prisoners after every single combat. He briefly entertains the idea of trying to get himself a fine lady with which to produce a great many little Forkwads. But after being snubbed by Nadir, he decides that women are only into bad boys like his brother Najun, and resigns himself to the life of an incel. Najun and his wife Panalia can provide Clan Maximum with all the babies it needs, whilst Forkwad watches from their cupboards at Sanapea between his conquests. After a whole lot of following around armies, Forkwad has a decent bit of influence to his name. So in order to grab the last little bit of renown required for Clan Tier 4, he summons an army almost 1,500 strong under the banner of Clan Maximum to siege the Vlandian town of Lagetta. And despite his incredible performance in the siege, the council didn't even consider granting it to Forkwad. Foul bureaucrats. In any case, the siege combined with a battle outside the walls afterwards are enough to get it done. Clan Tier 4. It's time we forged our own path. How's about you forge your own path to just below the video, where those like and subscribe buttons are hidden? You done? Okay. If you're quite finished clicking those very important buttons, after spending some more time on the eastern steppes, replenishing the hordes, we relinquish our service to the Western Empire, keeping hold of Sanapea, which makes Garrios rather angry, and that's fair enough, I suppose. So, the Kingdom of Maximum. Yes, it's a bad name, leave me alone. Anyway, the Kingdom of Maximum is at war with the Western Empire, which isn't a great situation for them to be in given the massive disparity in power, but we have something that they don't. Horse archers. For the most part, we avoid meeting their larger armies on the field. I know from experience that Garrios has another 3 wars on the go, so he probably won't actually expend that much manpower punishing Forkwad for his betrayal, which means that we can skirmish the smaller parties that we run across whilst raiding nearby villages in an effort to bring down the amount of tribute we'd have to pay in order to make peace. But honestly, this is going so well at this point, facing our old friend Achios on the field and only suffering a single casualty, that perhaps we should look to gain a little more than just a white peace. The nearby Varagos castle looks ripe for the taking. The siege is quite simple. We've got enough soldiers between Forkwad and his companions that it really shouldn't be too much of a struggle. Forkwad runs off to one side onto a hill so that he can shoot at the folks manning one of the fort's onagers, which is either a catapult or an Asian wild ass. I'm pretty sure it's a catapult in this case, but, you know, it's quite hard to see what you're shooting at when the tassels of the Guandao-looking thing on your back are hanging in front of the camera. Nevertheless, Forkwad's... Forkwad's what? What do we call them? Okay, Forkwad's freebooters feverishly finagle their way into the castle and claim it for themselves. And then, seeing the Western Empire's response force on the horizon, Forkwad swiftly makes peace. But we're still at war with the Northern Empire, who apparently just don't like us very much. Now, I don't want to pay them 3,000 dinars per day as tribute, but if I don't, then they're going to take Varagos Castle, Sanapea, and then presumably Forkwad's Onager in that order. So annoyingly, we're now bleeding dinars. But at least we don't have a bleeding... never mind. It's time to build up in the relative peace that we've bought for ourselves. Which for Forkwad means paying the Kazites another visit and stealing all of their recruits. Earlier on, I cleared a load of hideouts over on this side of the map, so we can quite easily fill the ranks in 1 or 2 passes. And when he gets back from his travels, he finds that Najun and Panalea have produced a human child. Forkwad fizzes with the repressed, jealous rage of an incel and marries off his sister to some random Aserai lord in response. I don't really know whether or not that does anything for me. I kind of just half-read the message and then clicked yes. Thankfully, he doesn't actually have time to make any more rash decisions in his fit of manlet anger, because the Sturgians have declared war and are looking with amorous eyes at Varagos Castle. There's only about 400 of them compared to the over 500 men that Forkwad can muster. However, the keen Bannerlords among you will know that the Sturgians are large, fearsome and well-muscled men of the sea that appear to have been made specifically to counter the horse archers of the Kuzite steppe, with their massive round shields that overlap when they're in formation. So Forkwad and his freebooters got it done, but at what cost? A few similar fights take place in the valleys nearby Sanapea, with Forkwad just barely coming out ahead. The Sturgian horde, it appears though, has no end. So once again, Clan Maximum is forced to make a costly peace to save itself from extinction. And almost immediately afterwards, as if sensing the blood in the water, the comparatively weak Southern Empire declares war too. They show up at the presumably now very tired gates of Varagos Castle, with a pair of armies 500 strong. It's unlikely that Forkwad and co will be able to stop this force as it stands, so instead he does what he does best, and watches the action from the sidelines. Then after the castle falls and the attackers are weakened, he steps in to finish the job. What I'm saying here, in case you aren't getting it, is that Forkwad is a cuck. Anyway, he steps out from behind the wardrobe and finishes off the pair of Imperial armies that are by this point largely composed of recruits. He takes a great many prisoners, swaps the flag back over at Varagos Castle after killing its mighty 7 defenders, and then drops off all of his prisoners there. The war with the Southern Empire for the next few weeks could be best described as a series of skirmishes in snowy valleys, in which a massive force of horse archers absolutely obliterate gangs of shivering Imperial recruits, whilst Forkwad watches from behind a rock like the cuck he is. But simply inflicting thousands of casualties on the enemies actually doesn't win a war, because more gullible Imperials will just be born and drafted into more armies. I'd like to get something out of this war. Something more than just the sheer enjoyment of watching and listening to the footmen and their lords getting shot to death in a mountain pass, that is. So it's on the offensive that the freebooters go to Shanopsis Castle with conquest in their eyes. The recipe for sieging with Forkwad is quite simple. He rides ahead and finds a nice comfy spot to stand in and shoot archers off the walls from, and then once the walls are breached, he whips out his polearm and goes full on sicko mode on the soft, fleshy militia. Sestadheim Castle is taken in the same manner before I make peace with the Southern Empire, honestly kind of by accident. I just assumed it was a prisoner ransom message and clicked yes before I realised that I was making peace. Oh well. The clan has advanced to tier 5 now, so we're off back to the steppe for yet more horse archers, before making the questionable but undeniably fun decision to declare war on Big Daddy Garrios again. Because just look at the size of Forkwad's horde. I mean, look at them. I had to stop and go into photo mode just to get a wider look at this absolutely terrifying mob of horses. Predictably, then they absolutely massacre the enemy in the field. Repeatedly, in fact. Forkwad's party is also very fast on the campaign map, easily able to chase down smaller parties to put them under the hoof of Clan Maximum. Thorios Castle is liberated in a fairly swift siege that, to be fair, did involve the largest single catapult splash I've ever seen. That one militia spearman really earned his pay that day. Unfortunately, he also died that day, along with all of the other defenders of the castle. Shortly after taking it and heading away to other conquests, none other than Garrios himself arrived to try and snatch it back. Well, well, well. This is what Forkwad has been waiting for. His moment to pounce, striking from the shadows. Garrios never saw the arrow coming. So after doing the whole horse archer circle of death thing to the rest of them, we have Garrios himself as our prisoner. Clearly this only ends one way. And thus follows the endless stream of relation decreases, which I suppose will happen when you execute an emperor. We should probably do some more of that. It's good fun. So after snapping up a few more of the Western Empire's holdings, namely Diathma and Rhesus Castle, the Aserai declare war. So I guess it's a fat lot of good that marriage earlier did then. In the spirit of keeping as few wars as possible on the go at any given time, we make peace with the Western Empire for a paltry tribute of 200 dinars a day. Were it not for the meddlings of the Aserai, I think we probably would have wiped them from the map. Oh well, there's no time to worry about that, because they're rather literally at the gates. The gates of Shanopsis Castle, and by the time we're over on that side of the map, they've already taken it. But Forkwad, being a sneaky rat, runs their army around for a while, playing the distraction long enough for them to break apart and scatter, providing one or two considerably easier fights. But unfortunately, it seems that the entirety of Calradia is conspiring against Forkwad, with Britannia and Vlandia both joining in on the bully circle. Alright, if we're going down, let's kill as many of these massive, broad-shouldered chads as we can on the way out. We can't possibly hope to defend our holdings against 3 considerably stronger kingdoms, but we can at least try to hunt down their leaders. So after violently convincing the first wave of Aserai to clear off, Caladog himself, the leader of the Britannians, is besieging Rhesus Castle with a delightfully small force of stinky forest people. Despite trying his best early on in the combat, Forkwad didn't manage to personally take Caladog down. Some random imperial equity from another party got him. So after the fighting is done and the dust has settled, take off your silly golden hat, Caladog. It's your turn. Alright, on to Unkid, the head of the Aserai. He's around here somewhere, and he's perhaps the chattiest Empire daddy of all Calradia, with his gorgeous flowing locks and extremely golden armor. Which you'd think would have made him rather easy to pick out amongst the masses, but I never saw him as Forkwad and his freebooters shot the Aserai Horde to bits. Never mind, he was clearly in there somewhere, because here he is now, looking all sad and injured. Funnily enough, amongst the loot from this fight, there was a massive executioner axe. Let's see if it works. However, as much fun as this is, unfortunately Forkwad is finding out that cutting the heads off of these angry Calradian snakes does nothing to calm the bodies. The walls are closing in. The shield walls of his enemies, that is. So it looks like this is going to be a problem for his brother Najun to deal with. I'm sure he'll be fine. Forkwad is off to meditate on a mountain for the rest of his life. Whatever you do, please remain indoors. At least a few of the original Calradian lords are still out there, and I assume that they're pissed off. Thanks as ever for watching, and until next time, goodbye.